Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Abez Show. With me, your host, Abe. Today, I have somebody very special who I've known quite a bit for the last while, another serial entrepreneur in the ecosystem. Everybody, please help me welcome Tarig. Tarig, how are you?
I'm good, my friend. How are you?
Good. Surviving, I guess. Tarig, please tell my guests who Tarig is and tell me more about you.
Okay. Sorry, my daughter might kind of just come in and burst in, and look, you can hear her vocally interrupt. Thank you. Yeah, it was bound to happen, right? I will start by saying that I'm, mixed emotions right now. Like on the one hand, I'm super excited to be on the Abe Show. When my agent called me, I was like, "What are you talking about?" And he's like, "Abe wants you on." But then on the other hand, seeing this is like episode, I don't know, 5,982, and you've had everything from Jordanian princesses to other people. Like, I'm also slightly offended that you thought about me so late. But that's another conversation. I'll pick that bone with you later. Right. Who am I in a nutshell? So do you want me to walk you through my life journey? Like, what's the best way to describe this?
I know you're the good storyteller. Tell us Tarig.
Okay. In a nutshell, so I grew up in the Middle East. I'm actually British, even though I sound American. I did molecular biochemistry at the University of Oxford, so I'm a nerd. I'm still a nerd at heart. I spent my 20s as an evil investment banker in the house of Lehman Brothers. Sorry. And also within the consulting space for quite a bit as well, and in private equity. And what I learned through that experience was what you learn from consulting is kind of like thinking through frameworks and solving kind of big problems, optimization. And during my banking years, I think you just learn execution, just getting stuff done, right? And then I kind of went down with the ship when Ben Bernanke made that wonderful call in September 2008. And that was kind of like my first nudge or push, whatever you want to call it, into entrepreneurship. So I started my joke is I started working for the best idiot that I know, and that's myself. And I started a couple of businesses into my 30s. On average, when I kind of average it out, I do about 2 ventures or companies every 2 years. Well, 1 company every 2 years over the last decade. And I've built companies in kind of men's fashion, D2C, e-commerce, in health tech, HR, insurance, in real estate. There was a kind of a food tech company that I just did 2 years ago. It's no longer with us, hasn't survived. We did a technology company in the health tech space, which we sold to Moldor. And I'm kind of working on a couple of projects right now to kind of keep me busy.
Nice. It sounds to me like you've been busy, which is good. People that build usually are always busy, and they're laying low, trying to figure things out and stuff like that. But I want to go back picking on some of the things that you said.
Sure.
So how did that Lehman's thing happen? I'm curious. How did you stumble into
Well, the closest book I would recommend to like be the closest to truth without being too dramatic, because there's been a ton of stuff out there, right? Like The Big Short by Michael Lewis. The movie is great. It's close, but I certainly don't remember Margot Robbie being in my bathroom. I definitely would have remembered that. Maybe the book Too Big to Fail is probably the closest description of what happened. But I mean, in a nutshell, what it was really the entire failure of the banking and credit system, particularly in the mortgage and residential space. It's a space that I actually was in. So I started in Lehman exotic derivatives trading, and then I was like, hold my beer. I can see a big opportunity in real estate. So I apologize for some of the things that we did. And it was really just it was a incredibly fast, rapidly evolving and innovative industry. And you had very, very smart people working on cutting edge technologies, financial products to kind of, leverage what was ultimately a tool, securitization. And unfortunately, that for for a long period of time, cumulatively led to the piling up of just bad credit debt on the books of all our banks. And I know like Lehman is the most infamous one because it was a, I don't know, 152-year-old institution with God knows how many billions of dollars under management that just disappeared overnight. That was the fall guy, as it were. But all the banks were sick. Goldman, Morgan, Bank of America. People forget about, the shotgun weddings that happened with JP Morgan. But they were all fundamentally sick, and that's when the governments had to step in and literally bail them out. That's how that happened. So I would say when you have a fuck up of that magnitude, it's never one person or one entity. It's literally a flawed system, and the system got out of hand because of cheap credit. A lot of people would argue that we're kind of in a similar space, seeing it where we are right now in the debt cycle and the finance cycle. The difference is this time the banks are very healthy. They have very healthy balance sheets from the crap that they went through. But, everyone calls now like the everything bubble, right? Real estate, in Toronto, I hear you going off on that. And that's like crazy, right? The amount of venture financing, not just in the Middle East, but worldwide is like record numbers because of that search for yield. So, that's a little bit scary. Like it does give me, they say history doesn't repeat, but it rhymes. And I certainly get that feeling right now. It doesn't scare me so much, personally speaking, because now I just view it as opportunities like I did before.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. No, and so when did you, as Tarik, know that this is not something you want to keep doing?
So I'll be honest with you. I've been an entrepreneur, intrapreneur, whatever you want to call it, pretty much fresh out of university. So my first proper job was with a consultancy. I won't mention names, like they're a big one. And within 6 months, like they offered me a job and they loved me. And I was like, this is bullshit. I'm not hanging around because, I felt a bit disingenuous, like writing recommendation papers that the MD would tell me, oh, don't worry. Like we know they can't execute on that that go-to-market strategy. So we'll be back and just milk the fees again. And that didn't sit well with me. That was kind of like my first job. But when I got into Lehman, like it was so flat. And honestly, Lehman was like 40% of the company was owned by its employees. Like the culture was really, we still have this joke where if you cut me, I'd bleed green, right? If I meet another Lehmanite on a call, there's that instant connection of like how we think. And it was a great training ground of like, it's about merit. Doesn't matter what your title is or how old you are. It's about, whether you're a problem solver, whether you made money and all that other stuff. So I always joke and say Lehman kind of ruined me. So that when Lehman collapsed and I started working for other big institutions like traditional banks, private equity houses, I was always trying to push the envelope and I basically questioned everything, right? I was trying to push it and learn more and innovate more, and that didn't jive well with people. And I think traditionally that's why I ended up doing my own thing, right? Like I joke with my wife who was like, oh, why do you keep doing this? I tell her like, I'm the most reluctant entrepreneur. Like I'd love to work for people. It's just, no one will have me. I ask too many questions.
Okay. No, it's definitely something that, and like we're seeing that a lot these days in, with what's happening in ventures, with all these new models are coming up. The funds, most of them are now bringing even half half an X return. I think that's a majority is not even doing a 1X return. So
You're talking about venture capital, right?
I'm talking about venture capital. Even I'm talking about private equity. I'm talking about all kinds of things. And and I know me and you have worked on a couple of things, in the past, and we're also exploring these other new relative business plans where there's corporates are trying to get into investments themselves, having either funds or trying to build something of their own. Even the funds are creating their own startups.
Yeah.
With the whole venture builder model and the whole venture corporate venture building models. But do you think builders? I know I feel that entrepreneurship or startup at least, and I don't mean tech startups. I mean startups in general, because a lot of them, this new term that popped up a couple of years ago, which is tech enabled, which means they have some kind of technology aspect, but it's, like Cloud Kitchens is a tech enabled business. It's really a kitchen, but it's optimized somehow, right? and on all these like I've been hearing all kind of crazy tech enabled businesses, and so I think it's like more of a fashion statement to have to be a part of. Oh, I'm starting my own company, even if I'm 21 or 22, and there's nothing wrong with doing that. But you have to understand experience is king, and builders bring a lot of experience, and from what I've been seeing lately is a lot of builders ask the tough questions that people do not want to hear. And saying that, like, do you think there is either an evolution um, of that is as a builder getting a bit more streamlined, or is the mainstream going to go more builder where they can ask and say no to, because you've worked with a lot of consultancy agencies and you've worked with a lot of banks and corporates where people expect yes men. They're like, some guy says, oh, we have this idea, and everyone's like, oh, well, this is the idea I want. While a builder says, nah, crap idea, I don't want to do this, right? And are you seeing that more and more often? Because I am. I don't know. I'm just, I know it took a while to formulate.
You mean as a cultural mindset, a change in the way people
Yeah.
think?
Do you think there's a cultural mind, change, even mentality way of thinking? Like, because there's a lot of startups and people don't like, I was talking to somebody just yesterday who runs one of the biggest startup columnists in a newspaper in the MENA. And they said, oh, every day you're hearing investments. And I'm like,
Are you really?
but like there's 20,000 startups in MENA alone. We're hearing one investment a day. That's less than 0.5%. And we're not even hearing of big tickets. And a lot of these undisclosed tickets. And a lot of these, they raised six figures and they raised 50K. That's not a money. That's somebody putting his life savings, probably a startup, right? So do you see that change?
Okay, so there's a couple of things that you mentioned there that I think are worthwhile unpacking. So the first thing is like, yeah, I think the evidence in regards to like what is the right DNA or time to kind of build a venture or start a startup, whatever you want to call it. Yeah, I think experience is really important. Like, if I look at myself with my first venture that I built, right out of investment banking, I thought I knew it all when actually I knew nothing. I knew finance inside out. So like I could have a sophisticated finance discussion about convertible debt with the VC and sounds like a smarty pants, but I didn't have the experience to manage the board, to manage the politics. I definitely didn't know how to handle people. And in business, it's all about people, right? Like I managed alpha minus, males, females from like the best universities in the world, right? Super smart, got it first time. Guess what? Most of the world's not like that. So that was a rude awakening, and I could actually quantify that. Like, in my first venture, we raised $650,000 in the MENA back in 2012, which was a freaking fortune, right? With inflation, that's like, 4 million-ish, give or take, right? Like a good seed, right? Like, a decade ago. So it was big bucks back then. And we almost went bankrupt within the first 12 months of operations. Like it's embarrassing the kind of stupid stuff, we did. And then fast forward 4 years later, after a lot of battle scars and fuck ups and legal issues and you name it, there I am launching another company with a lot more, just experiences in my mid 30s. And, within a year, we went through product market fit, had frameworks, tested them out. We had dynamic equity that enabled us to deal with shocks. And then we ended up selling the business within less than a year, right? And that was with only $150,000 of angel investment. So they were super happy. We're all super happy. And that delta really came from everything else that I learned from the last one. And by the way, that's compounded itself, right? Like when we were parachuted into Webteb, which is the company that came after, we exited that business because we could just circumnavigate all the issues that you can see, and then so on and so forth after that. So look, the data is kind of definitive. Like the most successful just companies, full stop, whether tech enabled or not, are on average run by CEOs. I think in Europe, I read the study recently, they were kind of like mid to late 30s. In America, it's actually late 30s to late 40s is kind of like the sweet spot. Strong bias, of course, towards white males, unfortunately, because the system is kind of built that way, but things are getting better for everybody else. And really to kind of come back. So my recommendation to someone young saying, Tarig, should I start a startup? I would say, unless you stumbled across like something mind fucking blowing, like that, it's that 1 in a billion kind of unicorn opportunity, like your Zuckerberg, then yeah, go for it. But more often than not, I would actually recommend that you probably work within a startup, because that'll give you a flavor as to whether you're ready to embrace that dynamic chaos or not. But coming back to that,
you know what I tell my startups. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I
go
tell
ahead.
my startups, get your failure out of the way, because especially the 20-year-old kids, you know what I mean. Like, I know some of them get lucky, or they're super like, perseverance is one thing and smartness is one thing. Like all of us, but experience is really king.
Yeah.
You might be an expert in a domain that you're starting in, but as you said, you're not expert in hiring. You're not expert at finance. You're not expert at dealing with investors and stakeholders and client management.
Yeah, you learn by doing, for sure.
Yeah, and that's something that people do not always think about. They're like, oh, I work at Nestle and I can optimize their production line and whatever. I'm like, yeah, sure, but okay, it's only you who can do that. Can you find 3 other people that can replicate what you're doing? And then
100%.
and then again, and then a lot of people as well have a good idea of a feature or but not a product, you know what I mean, like, or an enhancement, and they cannot build a business on that. You know what I mean? And I see that a lot with age. Everybody tells me, I want to build the chain, whether it's a supply chain or whatever. And I'll be like, yeah, this guy is gonna have some issues, or girl.
Well, it's more like, do you know how hard it is? Do you know how hard it is to do that? And the only reason, like, an entrepreneur would want to do this again and again is because, and everyone talks about passion or whatever. I just think we have really bad memory, right? Like, it's like giving birth. Not that I've given birth, but you forget. Otherwise, you'd never do it again, right? Like, you go into it thinking it's going to be different this time. There's no J curve or something stupid like that, and you rationalize it, and then you're just too in. You're pregnant. Like, there's no way you can get out. Is the way I joke about it.
No, but like I can't stress enough, because so people ask me before getting on the show, why am I doing this show? And one of the major things that I want to push across is I want to talk about when people either faced an obstacle or failed, and how did they work around it. Because in MENA, that's a very big taboo. Actually, globally, it's a big taboo topic, because we were just talking about this a couple of days ago. In a corporate world, if you do something and fail, you get labeled as a failure. While in the startup world, you get celebrated. Like, I remember when I was at Dubizzle, we used to lose majorly on a campaigns, and then we'd go out and celebrate. You know what I mean? Like, at least we got it out of the system, and we know that we never have to ask the question, what if this happens? You know what I mean? So
yeah.
So
long as it's calculated risk, right? Like, so long as the learnings, the return on learnings is much, much more than whatever you did, right? So you run a Facebook campaign, you spend $500, it gives you garbage, but yeah, I learned that's not the right campaign to run. Okay, that's calculated risk. What you don't want to do is take stupid risk, right? Like, that should not be celebrated. You should celebrate calculated risk.
Yeah. Obviously, like, we're not going to say, oh, we lost $1 million. Oops, that's not something.
Yeah,
somebody needs to be good. Probably somebody needs to get shot there. But no, but I'm saying, like, if this person's saying, I want a couple of $1,000 to run a campaign about this, and it really doesn't work, at least we check it off the list. All right, so let's
something about the kind of mindset in regards to, like, asking tough questions and being a venture builder and building. So I have to say, the pattern that I've kind of recognized there is, for most entrepreneurs, what's the best way to describe this? Like, the tough part of the questioning is because we kind of need to be convinced. Like, we're very skeptical, and we go in there, whether we do it intentionally or mindfully or not, but we go in there with kind of like a thesis, whether we define it or not. And they're like, why is it? And you kind of go through your 5 whys, and we ask annoying questions like children. And so we actually don't do anything in the beginning. We're very much like, why? Is it worth my time? How big is the market? Why would this customer do it? I need to talk to 5 more customers. Oh, this person said that law is there, but is it really there? and you tend to see that movement until something clicks. And then, benanid, as we say in Arabic, like you become really stubborn. This is it. I can see it. There's a gap. Nobody gets that. And that's kind of like where we really drive it forward. And then it's very hard to shake us after that. Typically, like I've seen that in some of the best entrepreneurs. They don't actually start building until they themselves are really convinced there's an amazing opportunity there. And that mitigates kind of like your cost of failure and your time a lot of the time.
Yeah, I know. I totally agree. And so learnings is a big part, and I generally believe in these two aspects of learning and failing, All right, so let's change gears on this conversation. So I'm going to ask you a couple of personal questions now.
Fire.
First one. So what is Tarik's BHAG?
My what?
Your BHAG. Big, hairy, audacious goals or ambitious goals.
Oh, wow. I've never heard that before. I love it. Okay. Yeah, I'll share it with you. So about 3 years ago, I said that one of my North goals, life drivers, is to kind of have an impact, leverage some of the stuff that I do. And I thought the best way of doing that is to create entrepreneurs. And how I define me creating an entrepreneur is I needed to have touched this person's life in some way, given them advice, connected them to an investor, worked in the company, something that resulted in, and the way I measure this, and I'd love feedback whether this is a good way or not, but typically they've raised $1 million and financed something, which to me is maybe a bad signal, but a signal of some kind of product market fit. Or to had an exit of at least $100,000 to themselves, right? So I started that about 3 years ago with what I thought was an ambitious target of 100, and I got that, last year. So now I'm redoing that all over again, but the number now is 500, and I'm kind of looking at a business model that'll allow me to get to that very, very ambitious goal. But I'm doing it in a couple of different ways. So that's my big, hairy, ambitious, super scary, ballsy goal. Did I mess up?
So the BHAG is something usually people talk about, and it's usually a 10 to 25 year vision, right? And it's I don't know if it came out of tech, but I know like when they say the North Star metric, that's a very tech thing, but the BHAG is usually like more.
Oh yeah, but I'm far more tactical than 15 years time. Like. Yeah. For me, in 15 years' time, I want to look back and say, I'm happy and I have an awesome family, and I'm already there, right? Like, so, I can't look that far ahead. It's way too much ahead. Like 5 years is good enough for me.
Okay, and that's fine. You know what? Like, I can tell you, I only plan maybe 18 months to 2 years because honestly, the way I've been living my life, especially like. I've lived in so many different cities, worked with so many different companies, and actually started so many. And everybody knows Abe has issues with commitment.
I did not know that. I learned that new thing about you. I feel you're very committed to caps.
Yeah, I am. That's true. A part of my 250 plus hats, but
very expensive hats.
Yeah, and so no, there is a couple of things like I get super excited in the build phase. And then from a guy who started his career, the first 12 years of my work career was operations, means day to day. I did the same thing over and over. Right now, that's kind of on the back burner. I don't ever want to do that again. I just want to keep building, innovating, repeating. And that's what it is. And that's what the whole what's it called? The commitment issue came from. But okay, so talking about this, I'm going to ask you another question. What is something that you regret doing in your work life? Not anything outside, please. Let's keep it PG.
I know. I'm so glad you added that last caveat in there. This could have gone. You just would have bleeped the whole thing out anyway. So something that I regret, kind of from the, at the risk of sounding, too. It's difficult to kind of point at something and say, I regret this because I gained nothing out of it. I would say at least for me, some of my biggest career mistakes have allowed me to make the right calls further down the line, right? So, okay, I'll give you one regret, but I don't regret it because I learned from it, which is, after the collapse of Lehman, I was lucky enough. I think I was actually like the first employee to be offered a job role immediately at a couple of some of the largest institutions, Morgan Stanley, Macquarie, you name it. And I made the decision to join one of the banks purely because they're offering me the biggest bonuses, and I thought, yeah, cool, I can have an impact. They want me to build an M&A industrial team, real estate, blah blah blah. But if I really boil it down, it was the safest, big bonus, blah 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 choice. And in hindsight, that was definitely the wrong choice to make, because it was a choice that was based on money as opposed to the long term, right? And what I really wanted to do. But I don't regret that, because one, I got paid a lot, and I bought a stupid car and did stupid things. I regret those things. But again, those are life experiences that allowed me to become the person that I am, and get it out of my system and meet my wife and all that good stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I think we're made by our scars and our mistakes and our regrets, and we should embrace them. I don't think we should look back and kind of revel in them. It's not healthy.
Yeah, and you know what? It's something I agree 100%. Like, there's a lot of things you would wonder, if you took that path, where would you end up?
Yeah.
But I don't call them regrets. You know what I mean? Like, people say, you know what? I should have studied this in university. Or, you know what? I couldn't wait to leave university. I took the easiest and shortest route out of university, because
I hear you.
you know what I mean? Like, I just wanted, and I wasn't on the big of a partier too. So I just wanted to start working. I wanted to earn some money. I've made some really, in my opinion, some bad calls in trusting somebody or joining somebody or something. But then again,
But then you learn from that, right? Like then
the
what
learning
that person kind of looks and feels like. So it's about experiences.
Yeah, it's the cost of learning. I call it, you know what?
Yes.
Instead of I should have earned X amount, that X amount went into an education aspect. You know what I'm saying? So this is something that we and I can tell you, like, from a person who worked with a lot of cool startups and worked with like Fortune 5 companies. Got to think about it, like I wouldn't have done a lot of the stuff that I've done now, knowing what I know now. But it's fine. It's fine.
Yeah, and it's the culmination of everything that you've done, right? So whether you're a football coach and the network and friends and the lessons you learned in coaching people that allows you to run accelerators 20 years later, right? Like it all somehow the path is mapped out. The question is just kind of enjoying the ride, right? Because we're all
and exactly
the same way.
The question that I hate seeing parents ask their kids, and I know I'm gonna alienate a lot of parents, or even teachers asking kids, saying, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" You know what I mean? Like, I'm in my mid-40s, I still don't know what I want to be, right? Like, I know I'm an entrepreneur, and I know what I'm good at, and I know what I do not want to do, but it's still, that question is something really, really a mystery for me, and I can tell you for now, I can tell you what I like, and something that I'm going to be working more on, which is I like working with people. I'm really good at finding the good out of people. And
that's your superpower, 100%.
And you know what I mean? And that's something that is, I got certified last month as well, in, like, I'm a professional business coach.
Congratulations.
Thank you. But that's something that I really want to look into. But my 10-year-old me would never tell you I want to be a business coach. Or I'm not saying I want to be a business coach, but I'm saying this is something I enjoy, right? I also enjoy growth, and I enjoy innovation, and but there's a lot of things, but formulating something is another thing.
Yeah. No, look, I don't think, and I'm a parent, I don't think parents would be upset at that statement. As a parent, I can empathize, right? Like, when my dad goes, what are you doing now? Like, selling suits, or like HR? What do you know about HR? And because he's come from that traditional mindset. And he was super happy when we did Webteb, because that was like medical, right? And I actually asked him to kind of be part of my app when I was testing it out. But I think as a parent, you always, it stems out of love and fear. You want the best for your child.
No, that's fine.
And our traditional parents like want structure, right? Like, they want you to be working, especially like Arabic backgrounds, Asian backgrounds. Unless you're a doctor or dentist or lawyer, you're a failure, right? Like, you gotta you got to get into those slots, but it's changed.
Yeah, no, my brother is an engineer and a doctor, and I'm the person who did business, and I'm the one who says,
You're
no,
black sheep.
you know,
Until you show them your bank account, right? Then it's a different
yeah,
story.
yeah. Well, we'll see. We'll see about that yet. This is still to be declared, but no. So okay, let's move to the fun section of this conversation. So I ask every single person on the show the same question, this question, and it is, if you had a superpower, what would that be? Or you can answer both questions. Or if you would like to mimic a superhero, who would that be?
Oh, that's a great question. So if I wanted a superpower, what would that be? Okay, that's an easy one because that's basically like my weakness. And I'm trying to think of, well, my favorite's Spider-Man, but I don't
Yeah,
think there's anything.
I can see that.
But that wasn't by my choice. That's just pure serendipity. So I'm trying to think like, okay, so I think a really amazing skill set that I see in some humans is that they can really empathize with other humans really, really well and really kind of understand things from their point of view. And I think that gives them a particularly good superpower at like leadership, influencing people, managing people, motivating people, and all that good stuff. They're people's people, right? Like my wife is like that. She's an extrovert, right? I'm like the other side of the coin, right? Like, I get like, I'm going to have to go have a nap after this conversation. Like, I love you, man, but still like, it's exhausting.
Yeah.
So I would say,
Those guys are called wooers.
they're called what?
Wooers. WOO. Wooers.
Rulers. Where'd that come from?
It's actually out of Gallup Strengths trait. You test for this.
Super.
Actually, it was my number one trait.
I was gonna say, I think you've got that because so my superpower is pattern recognition, right? And because I was so involved in hiring and Lehman and scale ups, like I can flick through CVs and people, but I've built a very mechanical framework of I think you're good at this. Whereas you're naturally good at that, right? Like you were born to do it. And I've told you this. I think you've got that skill set.
Yeah, no. So that's okay. So who would the superhero be?
Blah, blah, blah. It must be like one of the X-Men, one of the empaths, one of them, right? Like I can't think of what her name was. It escapes me. Not the bald guy, the other one, the cute one. It'll come to me. Yeah, she's cute.
Rogue? Is it Rogue?
Yeah, Rogue was cute, but that's not her power. She's stuck to people's power. That's a bad power to have. We've met people like that, haven't we? We don't like people like that.
You'd inherit the good and bad, right? So we'll see what happens from there.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no. So, well, Tarik, our time is very winding down. It was a pleasure talking to you. Would you like to tell my audience one final thing before we end this episode?
Oh, a final bit of word of advice on anything what to do with entrepreneurship.
Or anything like key learnings and things that you never eat that last hot dog. I don't know, like anything.
That's a really good tip. I wish you told me that a week ago when I was at Costco and I made that bad call on the third hot dog. It said kosher, right? So you go crazy. That's a really good tip. What advice would I give in life? I would say maybe this is just building on your regrets question. It's very easy for us to kind of look forward and say, yeah, I will spend time with my family. I will do things that really, really matter. I'll take care of my health. And very often we find us not putting ourselves first, right? We put our jobs or careers or whatever it is first. Make sure that when you're 90 and you look back, that's not one of the regrets, right? Like, so fail, make a lot of mistakes, experience life. Those are not regrets, they're experiences. But make sure you don't look back and say, I should have spent more time with my kids. Like, don't make mistakes like that. That would be my only kind of parting gift because it's my own challenge.
And little advice. I love this because mine, like I don't have, I'm not married with kids, but like I have a lot of people around me with married and kids, stuff like that. But I do put family first. And let me tell you a tip of advice. If you ever want to work with Abe or for Abe or anything, if you never talk about family in the interview, you never get hired. So And that's something, it just shows that you're fully rounded. It's not, if people only want to talk business, it's not somebody that would meet the criteria of working in the same environment as myself. So, and I think that's all good companies are really want to embrace that culture.
I
And
agree.
even the family, like, when you want to get married, you're always under the scope. So they're kind of testing you too in an interview. But thank you very much for coming on the show again.
Cool, man. Thanks for having me in episode number 5,892.
It's actually episode 11,433, but
Awesome.
hashtag that.
Feels
And
so
we
good.
do have a hashtag, by the way. It's called Real Talk No Nonsense. So please follow that. And looking forward to talking to you more, Tarik. And if you have anything else, please feel free to advise. If not, take care. See you later, and we'll talk soon.
Thanks for having me on the show, Abe. I really enjoyed myself.
Take care. Bye-bye.